Welcome to Fireside Adoptees, another Adoptee Fire Series interview. We're really excited to have our guest, Alex Gilbert, here, all the way from New Zealand. Just for a slight introduction to Alex, because he has a great story and I want him to be able to provide that himself. He's a Russian-born person who was adopted into New Zealand, I think at the age of 2. He's got a wonderful, prestigious career for such a young person. A writer for books, a writer of 2 books, a television writer, and a presenter. He founded an organization called I'm Adopted in 2015. It's a way for adoptees to share stories and also find support. And he's also produced a television series in New Zealand called Reunited, which followed around Russian adoptees who actually were reuniting with their families as this was being presented in a documentary series. So we're very interested to hear elements of that and also to interact with Alex and questions about the type of career he's had as an adoptee advocate, as somebody who's a supporter of adoptee causes, and also somebody who's recognized in our community for outstanding work and in a public sense in New Zealand. And hopefully, eventually, we will start to see some of that work up here in America. So Alex, welcome. We're very happy to have you here. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you for the introduction. And I just want to say, of course, I recognize a lot of people here. I know Winston is here. How's it going, Winston? Yeah, good to see you again, Jim, Ryan.
Man.
And it's great. It's great to see this community, and Keith. I do recognize Keith as well. Actually, it makes it a very small world, especially when a lot of us can connect like this, and it's been a good journey. This year has been a little bit more, difficult, but a lot of the stories in the community it's still very strong. So it's good to connect, even if I'm in New Zealand, halfway around the world. It's great to see that we have these platforms like this, so we can all connect with each other like that, and it's so useful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Alex. You have an amazing story. And it's caught public attention as well, and also given you opportunities that I think are pretty unique in terms of your ability to be far-reaching in your message. Would you like to tell us a little bit about your adoption story?
Yeah, so I came from an orphanage in Arkhangelsk, Russia, which is right at the very top, and I was in there for the first 2 years of my life, and then I came to New Zealand in 1994 when I was 2 years old, and I was adopted along with my brother, and we both lived a pretty normal New Zealand childhood. I grew up just like every other child, but when I was in my 20s, I then tried to connect, and I've reached out and did a search for my birth family, and then went over to Russia at the end of 2013, got to meet them, and then since then I've been going back and forth to Russia multiple times. I've been back about 10 times now, and then last year I was living over there for 6 months, and then we filmed the Reunited show and developing more, and of course having the I'm Adopted organization as well, which is registered here in New Zealand, but we're on a global scale where they're connecting with adoptees everywhere. So it's been a really good journey though, and it's great because connecting with more adoptees all the time is just so important for all of us. Definitely.
Absolutely. And you had, as I've followed your story, some things that struck me as unique were the interaction between your biological father and mother, which for many of us, I think our parents in that sense are not in touch, but there were elements in your story where your father assisted in being in contact with your mother, maybe even went with you on a visit to meet with her.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I first connected with my birth mother almost 10 years ago, and ever since then the relationship has been on and off, and she's got a lot of drinking problems, and I've had to learn to deal with a lot of her life, but I always put myself in her shoes, and herself she has never connected with her family because she was in an orphanage all throughout her life. And then when she was an adult, she went straight into work. So she's never met any of her family. It's only until recently, like the last couple of years, I've been able to track down some of her family, but she still hasn't met them. And so, but the relationship with her is very on and off. And my birth father really helps in that regard, because when there's something wrong or I can't seem to communicate with her that much, my birth father will be there, and he will say, like, I will help out I can connect. They're no longer together. They were only together as teenagers for a brief period, but he's always committed to help me with connecting with her as much as I can, even if I do lose contact here and there. But it's good to have that support from him.
Yeah, that was a unique thing for me in terms of what I had heard from adoptees and their stories. I
Yeah.
hadn't heard of someone having the experience of their father and mother being able to be in contact like that. I'm sure it happens more often, but certainly in the stories I've heard, it was something unique. I'm wondering, some of the things that you've said in the videos that you've released about your journey have a lot to do with what it felt like to be in Russia for the first time, how you felt like you went without any of the language, without any, maybe you had some exposure to the culture that you'd learned online, I suppose, probably. But
Yeah.
you made a comment in one of the videos I watched that you said that, I'm going to try to read this. I don't feel lost here anymore. I don't feel lost there anymore. Like you
That's
felt like
right.
you gained some facility in being in the country.
Yeah. When I got there, I really connected. There's a pros and cons with going there for the first time. I connected with the culture, I connected with the people, but I was always pushed back when I couldn't read a single sign. And I was telling myself, I wish I knew how to read this language because I was born in this country. I should know how to read this language. So that put me off and that really didn't help. That kind of knocks you down a little bit until you have to rebuild that resilience to get back up to understand that, hey, you weren't raised in this country. You have to learn to cope with that. So I took that in when I was there the first time. And then I slowly just started feeling a lot more comfortable within the first few days of connecting there. But at the end of the day, too, my childhood and my memories are all here. So I get homesick still. This is my home here, but Russia is always going to be my blood and it's always part of me.
I noticed how you described that before, which
Yeah,
is the blood. You mentioned that
the
Russia was your
blood.
blood and New Zealand was your home. And you described almost having two homes, which was very relatable, I thought.
Yeah.
Um, when when you first went over there, did you feel any connection to the, I know you said it took maybe a few days to feel any kind of comfort with it, but did you feel like anything in your bones, like this is a sense of belonging that kind of is deeply rooted in me? Was there any sense of that?
Yeah, I felt like I felt like especially when I met my birth parents, there was a connection right there in the belonging side. It took a little while just for when I was going to places. So the first place I went to was Moscow and it was at nighttime and I didn't see any of the city. It was the very next day that I actually connected with my birth mother and I didn't feel the sense of belonging right away then. It took took a few days for that to kick in and for me to really understand that. But at the end of it, I said to myself, I really felt like I had a connection with this place. It just felt right. But
Yeah.
it took a little while for me to take that in.
One of the recommendations you had for adoptees who unfortunately have had trouble with their search and maybe have run into dead ends was that if they're not able to find out genealogical information, that maybe the best they can do is to learn about the culture that their
Agree.
families came from.
Yep. There's a lot of sides where if an adoptee can't seem to connect with their biological family or they have if it's always going to be dead ends or there's going to be connections that are lost. I always say to a lot of adoptees, it's always good to try and connect with the culture and learn as much too. This is beforehand. You don't want to jump the boat too fast. You want to take the small steps with learning about where you come from, and then eventually, if you make a decision, understand that hey, there might be challenges or you might not find anything, but always understand that hey, it's good to learn about your culture at the same time.
Do you find that when the connection, you know what, I think there's three words that I'm going to phrase it this way that described
Right.
what I learned from listening to more of your story, which is I picked these three words: keep on connecting, and also connecting takes time. Two sets of three words. I heard a lot
Yeah.
about the repetition of connecting, connecting, connecting. And I thought that was so profound because it's easy, as you also have said, to feel like I met them, maybe this is done, or maybe I have my answers now, and to realize that the building that has to take place, the relationships that have to be established still can be very lengthy. They can be disappointing. They can be all kinds of things. And you've gone through a lot of that. Do you find that repeatedly you're encouraging adoptees to be aware of the complexities around the expectations you can and cannot have when you go into a reunion?
I agree. Yep, I think so because when you get into a reunion, I always feel like the journey is always going to continue. I mean, I understand that some adoptees want to connect and then they go home and they feel complete, and that's their own sense. It's how you feel inside. Um, but also, a lot of adoptees may go home, feel complete, and then later on not wonder there's something missing, but they're not sure what it is. So they keep telling themselves, "Do I want to go back? Maybe something really was quite disappointing and maybe it was heartbreaking and I just don't want to go through that again, but also I feel like I'm not complete. I feel like my identity is still not there." So it's trying to figure out the right path and the best way to approach that. So that's why I always say take small steps. Maybe you want to go back and connect, and maybe you might feel a little bit more like you were saying to fill that puzzle up, but the puzzle is always going to need to be, it's never going to be finished. It's always going to keep going. So there's always going to be moments where you might get knocked down, and that's how I look at it. There's always a path that you might follow, but you will sometimes go off that path and then you might go back on. But if you're going to be in reunion with your birth family, you may get, first of all, you feel excitement. You get excited about it. You're about to connect with your birth family. That's exciting. But also when the reality hits, the nerves kick in. You get absolutely nervous. You feel like you almost feel like you get cold feet and you can't do it. But when you do it, the weight comes off. But then you've got questions you want to ask. So many questions. You may go back home after that. It may happen very fast, and it will take a little while for things to sink in. But then later on, you might want to either go back. You might feel like you've lost a piece of your identity, or you've gained a piece of your identity, or you want to continue that. But also, a lot of adoptees are a bit too scared to go back to that. So it depends on how you approach it mentally and how you feel inside when you're really trying to connect with birth family.
Another thing that I thought was really interesting was the support you had from your adoptive parents in this journey.
Yeah.
And the fact that they even traveled with you, right? Have gone to
Yeah.
Russia with you, and they've met your biological parents, or I wasn't
Yeah,
sure.
so a few trips after me first meeting my biological parents, my New Zealand parents, they came over with me, and they came with me to Moscow, and they got the chance to meet my birth parents at the same time. And that was, I would never expect that to happen ever. And that was really, I know with my birth mother, she was quite shy. She was very thankful about how I was raised, and that was all good with that. But she went back home quick, and she was just like, she just felt like I've done this. I've met his parents. That's cool. I'm moving on. My birth father was like, I want to connect with his parents for forever, and he was connecting so much more. And to this day, he still talks to my parents. So he wanted to keep that connection going. But again, there's two different sides to it. You put yourself into my birth mother's shoes, you know that it's not going to be so easy. So yeah.
I'm curious if you could say, if you feel comfortable sharing this, how your brother's response has been to your search. Is he sharing any of this? Or?
Yeah, of course. He was in my TV series as the last episode, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, so he's always sort of been on a wave of wanting to find out something, or just pushing back. He's afraid to know something bad, or he's just always felt comfortable being here, which is completely understandable. He hasn't been back, and he's always been very supportive. He's always been supportive of me connecting with my birth family, but for himself, he's always been taking his own time in his own space, and when he's ready, he will eventually go back over and meet his family, because I tracked down his family for him about 4 or 5 years ago, and he found out the information about his family, but his birth father was sort of on edge and undecisive to wanting to meet my brother. And so that put my brother off, because he thought it was going to be like my birth father, where he's welcoming and, come on in, but
Right.
it was different for his birth father. So I made him understand, like, hey, every story is so different. Everyone's going to react different. Birth parents are all different. So I had to sort of explain that to my brother a lot. And now he's come to the point where he's ready to go over, and he'll go over when he's ready, but that will take his own time. He'll take his own time with that, of course.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't want to intrude into his story. I just
No,
was
no, no,
curious
not a
about how
wor-
it
not
had
a
been
problem.
for you,
No
because
worries.
obviously what you're doing is very visible. And so of course he probably has a lot of feelings around his own
Yeah,
questions of identity, of self, and
yeah,
what's going
yeah,
on
of
with him
course.
as well. So thank you very much for that.
No worries.
I wanted to ask you about the work that you do as well. So what was it like to be with other Russian adoptees while they were making discoveries in real time with you being there to see what was happening with them when you were
I like
filming?
to, yeah, I like to, when when it comes to a reunion, I like to take a step back. So a lot of the times when that is happening, I give them their own space and they go and do the connection. And it feels like everything happens so fast, you know. It's like if you do a skydive, if it's a very long time, but it feels so quick. So it's like that with it's not exactly the same feeling, but you know, just it happens very quick and everything just feels like it's just finished. And everything's so overwhelming and you want to step back and you feel that connection with the adoptee connecting with birth family. And you want to go in there and give them all a hug, but also you want to step back and give them their own space.
Sure.
With a lot of adoptees, it was great because I was I was excited about connecting with Russia with them and explaining so many things about Russia and teaching them Russian words and the culture, and they all really enjoyed that. And just I was so proud to be there and show them what a beautiful country it was. And it is such a beautiful place, huge country, and so many beautiful people. And these people all see that. You know, we had a family from Iowa they had never been back to. They went to Siberia, and it was
Wow.
so cool because it was like a culture shock for them, and they just thought it was the most greatest experience. Or a family from Alabama came over as well, and they were just like, "Oh, I want to try all the Russian food. I want to connect." And then they'll get all excited, and then when it comes to the day of the reunion, it's very emotional, and you just have to step back and take it at their place. I don't go up to them and go, "Hey, you excited to meet your birth family?" No, 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 it's not
Mm.
like that. It's
Mm.
like, "Hey, I know this is going to be a very personal day. I want you to take your time, and we have your family meeting you at 12 o'clock. Are you ready?" And it was like me in the same position, pacing around, nervous, pacing around, wondering when this is going to happen. And when it happens so quick. And then everyone's talking to each other, asking questions, sharing photos with each other. And that's how it normally ends up.
Yeah. I imagine you must have to think about how to capture it effectively as somebody who's producing something.
Yeah. So there's a lot of times where we I tell the guy filming, and we also tell all the biological family that we are filming it, and they all agree prior. So there was one case where it was my brother's birth father. He's the only one out of all the series that said, "No, I don't want to be videoed," and he said, "I actually don't. I'm not comfortable with meeting my son if he's not here," because his one was a video call.
Oh,
So I said, "That's completely fine." I said, we would have been great. We could have not videoed you at all, and you could have still done a video call privately," but he still was not so keen on that. So that's because he wanted to meet my brother in person, which I completely understand that. So he's like, "What's the point of doing a video call? I want to meet him in person, and he should meet his sister instead." And the sister said, "Yeah, this is great. I want to talk about my life." So my brother sees that, and that sort of side of that. It depends on how birth families want to respond to that scenario, especially when you're saying, I was telling them my story to all the Russian families, and I was saying, "Look, I want to connect a story with your biological family, your brother and sister, your birth parents, all of that stuff. I think it's great to document this for themselves." And all the Russian families, they all have seen the stories, and it's just a beautiful piece put together, you know, piece by piece. But at the end of the day, of two, we take step backs, and we give them their own time as well. So we're not like, you know, like right there. It's always you
yeah.
take a step back a bit and let them do what they want to do.
I imagine you had a crew of people. Were
Yeah,
any of them non-adopted people, and did they have experiences that they were
we
surprised about?
we had one camera operator, and the director was also a camera operator, and we had one sound man. So that was all we had, and we had one person in the background just watching, making sure if nobody walks in front of us.
Mhm.
Those people were Russian crew and a New Zealand crew. and that was it. But those people had been working with me for a few years, so they had been understanding. I've been telling them as well, like just prior, about how sensitive this can be and how personal it is. So
Right.
a lot of that was all reflected a lot with all the family, all the crew. So all of that was always emphasized every single day. So that sort of stuff and the filming schedule, everything, we're trying to work around everyone's time. So in the morning, just start at 9 o'clock, and we'll go to a certain spot, give them some space, and just say, hey, when you're ready, we'll get the family to come and meet you. And that was pretty much like that. So it wasn't crazy hectic or anything. It seemed, looking back, it was a little bit hectic, but tight schedule too. Yeah.
I'm curious about the reception of Reunited in New Zealand. I don't think we have anything comparable in the US. Are there certain views of adoption publicly that made it a very successful presentation, or do you feel like the understanding of adoption there is maybe very open to what you were sharing?
The view on adoption here in New Zealand is very difficult because our adoption law is very strict and it's only being changed this year. So I'm I'm involved in the changing the law with that, and I put some words into the law changes. But in regards to documents that are provided to children of their birth parents, which is at the moment completely closed off, or it's very hard to get. So there's a lot of issues with our adoption law, which is from the 70s, and it has never been updated until now. So when the show came out, a lot of people were very, very I guess the everyday TV people, they watch it and they just get quite emotional because they see a connection of somebody connecting with their family, with their birth family. So that was the feedback that we got the most. It was the most watched show that we've had this year. So that was really nice to hear that feedback. And we had so many people reach out to me, so many people who were adopted reach out in the community. People had different views in regards to what was it, just the way, because I did the research for all the families, but also there was times where I didn't show in depth what I did exactly with all the research, which is fine. You'd be watched, that would be a whole episode in itself. So we wanted for the adoptee to share their story and talk about their background, and that's what we did in the start of every episode. So we would interview them one-on-one. We'll get them to explain about their story, not a journalist. It was them speaking about their journey, which is more important. Right. I wanted to be in their shoes, and that's why we also interviewed the birth family. So we had their side of the story, and that's the way I wanted it to be shown, to see how they both react, and especially with meeting their relatives and how emotional it is, and just how they express their feelings so much, especially when they're talking to me and I'm explaining, like, hey, I've been through this myself, me being through the journey myself. It's much easier to be able to connect, and I can relate to that to a certain extent.
Do you think that the reception had mostly to do, like you said, with people experiencing something, I'll call it heartwarming or something, that, oh, look, that's wonderful that they're connecting? Or did you feel like anyone became more aware of the really difficult and complicated situations around adoption?
Yep. It came to light about how there's so many challenges, so many roadblocks. That was the reality, that it's not a beautiful pathway of everything's going to be perfect, because it's not. And this is what I wanted to reflect, I wanted to show, because when they did my story, I think it was 10 years ago, they made it sort of look like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever, and he's connected with birth family and he's all happy. And it's not always about that. There's so many ups and downs, and there's so many challenges and emotions that come with it, and the very difficult sense of finding out that a birth family has died in a very tragic way, or you hear about that side of it. There's all that involved, and it's going to knock somebody down. It's not going to be easy. It's not easy to go through. So having the support there when you hear about these things is so important to have, and having someone there close to you, or having your family to talk to. There's going to be things that, when the reception of the show came out, a lot of people were saying it's good to see this side of it. You got to see the good and the bad.
Yes.
And it needs to be out there.
I imagine that's a crucial part of your advocacy work. Can you talk about? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm here at the moment. I've been doing stuff for the agency here in New Zealand, the adoption agency, and they actually they did my adoption 30 years ago, and I've been doing work with them. And there's yeah, there's a lot of stories that are just, they're quite hard. They're very hard to take in. You have people gone missing, or documents are all not real, or I reach out to a birth family and then they don't want anything to do with their relatives, and
Oh yeah,
that happens quite a lot.
that is the sad reality that,
Yeah,
and each case, as you've eloquently stated, is unique.
it's very
Everyone's
unique,
journey is
and
unique. Their
but
family members are unique.
yeah, but that's why we have the community too. So we have a lot of people connecting with each other, no matter what the story is, and that's why it's always welcome for that. It's not just about learning about the culture, but also just connecting with other adoptees, because again, every story is so unique. You sit down with somebody that you haven't met before, and they tell you their story, and you go, "Wow, it's another whole journey in itself." And yes, there's a lot of obstacles along the way, but we're all here to support each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about I'm Adopted, the organization?
Yeah, so it's 7 years in now, and we've just partnered up with the adoption agency here. So we've started doing a lot of, since the beginning, it's been a community online, and we've started connecting and growing with each other, with other adoptees. We went to there's a big community actually in Ireland. So we went over there about 5 years ago and had a lot of Russian adoptees there. I've been back to Russia a few times and connected with a few organizations in there. And then I've come to America a few times. And of course, we filmed Reunited over there. So that was all linked out of I'm Adopted. And the community it's a great community. And it's been very hard to run a charity, though, to say the least. It's hard to run a charity, but I'm now sort of not giving up my TV career, but putting that aside, and so I can focus on this full time. So I've just recently started doing this. So that will take a little while for that to build up again, but the journey's been great, and I've met a lot of people along the way, brilliant people I've connected with. So it's been good.
Really interesting. And I know you've written 2 books, correct?
Yeah, yeah. You know a lot, Greg.
I do. I try to be prepared.
Yeah, yeah, that's
What
true. I did. I have written 2 books. They're a little bit outdated though now.
I was going to ask you
Now.
if you felt like, well, I don't see myself as much in these maybe now as I thought I did at the time, or
Now, at the time, I just wanted to sort of spill everything out and write everything out. So, in the first beginning of me meeting my birth parents, I wrote and did a diary every single day, and I kept that diary and then I put it into a book. That's coming up almost 10 years ago. And then, oh, there we go. And Raya's got the other one. So that one that Raya got that's actually published in Russia. So we had it written in English for the second one, and then we had a publishing house in Russia publish a proper book for me, which was one of the greatest things I've never experienced before. But they put it into the Moscow library, and I went into the state library and saw my book there, and that was really bizarre. But
wow.
a lot of families got to connect with that, and I still get messages from a lot of Russians that say this is such an interesting story. And so that's good. It's awesome to see it. It's awesome to see it. But another book, maybe, Greg, maybe I need to catch up. I was starting to write one during the production of Reunited, but COVID, as we all know, how much of a delay that put everything off. That put us off filming for almost 2 years. So I just didn't get back into it, and I should have. Maybe next time.
Would you have any words for people who are contemplating searching or attempting reunion?
Yeah, definitely. I always say this, and it's always about talking to someone close to you, really taking small steps, and obviously understand that, hey, you have to be prepared for anything, but don't think it's always going to be just a big pathway of just, you know what I mean. Like, it's not going to be 100%. It might not go right. It might be hard. There's going to be a lot of obstacles, but know that you have the support there. And if you a lot of adoptees, don't get me wrong, I know a lot of adoptees get very excited about doing a reunion and they want to jump it and just go straight for it, and it's all exciting. But when a lot of stuff, when you don't do a little bit of talking with another adoptee within community, you're talking to adoptees, you need to talk to other adoptees in the community. That is so important before doing any search. That's what I think. I didn't really talk to many adoptees beforehand, and so I found out all this the difficult life of my birth mother. And I said to myself, if I knew this earlier, I would have approached it a little bit differently. It's taken me just to this point now, almost 10 years later, understanding what the true reality of that is like. And so that's taken a while for me to understand that, but I didn't have the community there back then. So I think connecting and supporting with each other is definitely important prior to doing any reunion.
I think you're right. I did it very impulsively when I did it. And there also was not any community around me at the time. It was many years ago. It's
Makes it harder.
2006. Yeah, I didn't even know the adoptee community was out there. I had no way to connect with them. So I wonder if I would have been as impulsive going into it.
Yeah, that's the thing, impulsive. But that's completely natural though to feel that.
Yeah.
It's completely natural. And you may, if you're completely closed off with everybody else and you just say, I want to find birth family, here's my paperwork, let me do a search. Of course, you're going to get excited about it. You'll get into it. But if you have something that throws you under the bus or something that hits you like a ton of bricks, you don't know how to cope with that. You don't know how to approach that because you're confused. It almost puts people off to continuing a journey as well. A lot of adoptees might push back and they say, I don't want to go any further. This is already too hard for me. This is too emotional for me, and I'm not even there yet. So it's just about having that support.
Yeah, I think the great thing about the adoptee community that I've experienced since I've been in it has been the level of support. I know it's the case that we don't always get along, unfortunately, internally, but overall there is, I think, an underlying unity of people wanting to support each other and care for each other and say, I relate to what you've gone through here and offer you the greatest empathy I can for what you're going through and everything.
We all have so much in common. We all have that one thing in common. We're all adopted, and that's the most important part. And so if we're new to a journey, no matter what part of the journey we're on, at least we can all connect in that regard. I could meet with somebody who's never gone through anything, and I could sit down with an adoptee and say, hey, look, one day you may or you may not want to connect. And then we're like, I'm just afraid. And I say, just talk to me about what you're feeling about. Like, tell me what you're feeling about. Or if somebody's done a journey, say 10 years ago, and I sit down with them and I've never done one, I would be asking them questions. I'll be like, what did you experience? How was that? Mm-hmm. What were the tough moments? Because I want to know how you're feeling. And it's vice versa. But as long we all have that in common, we're all adopted. So we can all talk about that.
Yeah, that's been the greatest thing for me is finding that support, finding that understanding. Yeah, finding the language of expression for what I was feeling that I didn't know how to articulate.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's been a facility that's been wonderful to get through the adoptee community. Yeah,
I agree.
I wonder, before we end here, Alex, if there is anything in particular that you would like to share that maybe we haven't discussed, or anything you're working on in particular you might want to talk about. Or...
Working on, I won't give too much away, Greg. Nope. No, but
we're looking for a scoop.
I'm working on coming back to the States.
Great.
And doing more traveling, and I'm going to start doing my sort of own version of, not Reunited, but doing my own documenting on YouTube and stuff. So I'm planning on doing that myself. Connecting that with I'm Adopted, and I'm partnering up here with these guys. So I'm trying to grow that more for 2023. So that's my plans with that. No book announcements though. I haven't even haven't got a pen and pad ready for that just yet.
Not trying to get an exclusive from you, don't worry.
Exclusive, yeah. But more of my YouTube channel. I've been working hard on that and just daily working on that, getting that. I'm a creator. I've done television for 10 years now, so I want to put more of that into what I do online. So just more of that side of it. And of course, growing within the community and meeting more people around the world. So that's what I want to keep doing.
Wonderful. Well, Alex, it's been a really wonderful time. We really appreciate that you've come and been so open and vulnerable with us about your experiences and things you're working on. Appreciate your work for everyone in the community. What we will do now is I will announce the end of the recording session, and we will open this up. So wanted to say to everyone so please watch the Fireside YouTube channel.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alex.